Welcome to another edition of NIMASA podcast. And on this edition, we'll be discussing a very important conversation around climate change. We want to understand, we want to ask questions. What is climate change? What are the effects of climate change on our economies and, of course, in the world today? To have this conversation with me in the studio today is an expert in climate change. Her name is Juliet Amwe. Juliet, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, thank you very much. So, talking about climate change, as you may be aware, as you are also aware, there be some level of inconsistency, in the weathers nowadays, and you're trying to wonder what is causing this. And the scientists, or maybe you people call it climate change. So, can you tell us what exactly is climate change?
Okay, yes. Climate change is just a word that describes changes in weather patterns over a period of time, temperature as well. So, this just describes what is different from the norm. So if we're talking about the temperature in Nigeria, we noticed that the past few years we've had the Hamatan season,
Yeah.
but some few years now we've not had experienced the Hamatan season. So each and every one of us would probably wonder what could have led to this. So that is something we describe as climate change.
So fine, yeah, you talked about the Hamilton seasons in Nigeria, and I know it's not only limited to Nigeria. Other countries have their own, the winter, the summer, and all that, and all that. Now, yes, maybe over truth, maybe we'll have some level of inconsistency in Hamilton, right? But like this morning, did you experience something like Hamilton?
No, I did
Maybe
not.
it feels like the weather is changing, maybe. But I think we experience Hamilton sometimes in December, right?
We
Normally,
usually
we
would,
should
yes,
ordinarily.
but not this year.
So,
Definitely not this year.
so why is this?
So this is as a result of changes to our weather patterns, as I earlier said, and it has a whole lot to do with our activities that has resulted into these changes. So one of such would have to be the population growth and how we use the resources, the natural resources that are available to us. All these activities will have an effect to how the weather is.
Okay, now you're talking about activities of humans, of course, population growth, maybe some environmental issues and all of that, But can you specifically point out to some of these aside from population growth? Of course, we know that when population grows, definitely the
There is need
amenities,
for
the
resources.
facilities, resources
Yes,
are going to be more used, right?
that's correct.
Yeah, so now, how can you link this directly with climate change?
Okay, yes. So one of the major ones is our need for energy.
Okay,
And when I say energy, I'm talking about what powers your heating system, what powers your lighting system, what powers your cars. So all these necessities to human needs are being gotten through natural resources, right? And for a while now, the use of fossil fuel. So when I say fossil fuel, are natural resources that will not replenish themselves, right? So we have coal, we have natural gas. These are all fossil fuels. So, for example, your cars run on petrol, right? Petrol is a fossil fuel. You also generate electricity through power stations that use coal. And all these are releasing some very toxic gases into the atmosphere
okay.
that changes the weather patterns.
Okay, now fine. You talked about I want to still talk about this population thing now. It seems you're talking about now there's something called overpopulation, right? Now let's assume that due to overpopulation, the amenities that are needed to meet up with the day-to-day, population.
Yes.
If these things are put in place, right? Let's assume they are put in place. Would this have an effect on curbing this climate change?
So it is not about having these amenities, it is about how we use them. So, for instance, you're building houses. You're going to have to cut down on trees. And cutting down of trees will also affect the carbon content in the atmosphere. Plants use carbon dioxide. If you're cutting them down, you're allowing a lot of excess of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, and it affects it affects the climate in general. And for instance, transportation. So with population growth, you
Yeah.
have a lot of need in the transportation
And they have to
sector.
use more
So
cars.
what do you use to fuel your cars? All this and so many more examples of things. Okay, so how you power your homes and all of that, they all contribute to climate change.
On a lighter note now, you talking about transportation, and then what do we use to transport people? That means it means that the more people on the road, the more population we have, the more people we have using various means of transportation, and because we are mostly fossil dependent, right? No, are you now saying we should go back to start riding horses or bicycles?
Definitely not.
Because maybe if we start riding horses or start using bicycles, maybe, I don't know. I'm not saying we should do that. I'm just
It is
asking
not such
you.
a bad idea, actually, but it is not very
Would you
efficient.
ride a bicycle?
I do.
Would you ride one? If today government says, okay, now we're going to cut down on using vehicles and we're going to create bicycle lanes and all that, where do you live in Lagos?
I live in Agor.
In Agor, would you ride a bicycle from Agor to Victoria Island every day?
An electric bicycle.
What is the place of humans now in helping to mitigate these factors? But not forgetting the fact that there are also God factors there. Am I correct?
Oh, yeah.
Because I know there's somewhere
absolutely
scientists would also identify at some point when they've looked at everything, they still talk about the God factor there, right? But then, as humans, what are our responsibilities to preserve, our environment and our climate?
So we do have a lot of things that we can do to help, to maintain our climate and to support the environment to remain in its natural phase. One of such things I would say is a responsible lifestyle, right? So I just mentioned about transportation. A common man can decide to use a public transport to reduce the number of cars on the highway. And though we made a joke about it, yes, you can use bicycles for short distances. You don't need to take the motorbike for short distance. You can use a bicycle. You can walk. It's good for your health and it's good for the environment. Another one is in your homes. You don't need to keep the electric bulbs on all the time, right? So if nobody's in the room, if you're not using it, put it off. Reduce your energy consumption. All this will have an effect in maintaining how much energy we have to generate, to sustain life. Another way that we can actually help is by planting trees. Earlier, I had mentioned that the more you cut down trees, the more carbon dioxide we have in the atmosphere. So do us a favor and plant a tree next to you.
Okay, now talking about planting trees, you said something earlier about people that want to build houses, right?
Yes.
You buy lands and then you want to build your house. You have to maybe cut down some trees, right, at some point. Now, is there a way that we can have, I don't know if I call it special planning now, right, whereby there are areas allocated for building houses, whereby you don't have to cut down trees. Is it possible?
Oh, yes. Here in Lekki, we have what we call a natural reserve area, the Lekki Conservation Park.
You're advertising for them.
I am not. No,
You're doing that. That's what you're
I
doing right now.
definitely am not. So the place is being kept in its natural state. So that is an example of how we can do that. Plan the city in a way that you can have green areas for maintaining nature.
Okay, now, so you talked about responsible use of resources, right? About maybe drop your car,
Yes.
enter public transports, public transports. I don't want to say more than that, but public transports.
Yes.
Juliet public transports. I'm not saying anything and you're laughing, but then
Okay, yes.
would you enter public transport?
Absolutely, I do.
Fine. So now and then you talk about maybe use of bicycles. Really, I don't think is a bad idea.
For short distances.
And then maybe
It is.
talk about scooters and all of that, the electric ones and all that. I don't think it's bad, but then people still now, the way we are wired somehow, I think maybe, I don't know what to call it, an African mentality, right? If I'm not in my car, I'm not seen as a big man. Not me. I'm
Right.
just talking literally, right?
Right.
Now, that means people need this kind of education to let them see. The more you use your car on the road, you are causing
More CO2.
pollution,
Absolutely.
right? And that is affecting, the entire environment. Now, so how do you convince someone to say, hey, you got to drop your car and then use a public transport or use a train or use a water transportation? How do you go about this so that we can all have a sustainable, environment?
Okay, so one effective way is to have public figures to lead the way. So take for instance, you're in a Lagos rail transport system and you see the governor of Lagos State using it. And this is not just for advertisement or just for publicity. Every day. How would you feel about it? So this is someone that you respect, you sometimes to an extent you admire using the public transport. So yes, we have influencers, we have celebrities that can lead the way to sensitize people to understand that use of public transport is good for the environment.
All right, thank you. So now, what's your final word, to the common man on the streets? You've already said to us that we should be responsible with our consumption, right? In our homes, we should not put on all the bulbs. In our homes, we should not, do one or two things. We should not do certain things that would, and then of course, now way of also disposing, goods and all that we're not using again. We should do X, Y, Z about that. Now, so what is your word for the man on the streets, for the woman on the streets, talking about climate change and their own responsibility? You had said government should play their parts, but of course, the citizens,
The individuals
also have their
a
parts
big
to play,
part
right?
Yes.
So, what do you have to say to the citizens this time around?
To every citizen, I want you to understand that climate change would affect you one way or the other. Climate change has an impact to your health, finances, and your environment. So if you have this understanding, you should make sure that you play your part. It might not be a major one, but the little effort you make will make a difference. And together we can help sustain our environment.
Thank you very much, Juliet
you so
Amwe, for
much for
coming to
having
us
me.
on this edition. Just said it all. Together, we can work together with the government to create a sustainable environment. Climate change is real. It can affect you, it can affect me, and every activity we do out there has a way of affecting our climate. And of course, we must remember that we must manage our environment in such a way that will leave something for the next generation and from one generation to another generation. So to wrap on this segment, my name is Femi Kumuyi. I remain your host. Thank you.